Hi, welcome to another My Sales Day podcast, where today I sit down with the accomplished Lindsey Dobbs. In this show, we hit on many segments that are going to interest you, including meeting prep best practices, one of those basics that gets underappreciated, and as well, a really good segment on how to practice your listening skills. And of course, a My Sales Day podcast wouldn't be complete unless we hear from Lindsey on how she deals with the stress and pressures of her job. Let me remind you, you are one URL away from signing up for the My Sales Day daily newsletter, which will give you a daily skill tip and inspiration in your box every morning. Go to mysalesday.io. Again, mysalesday.io. Now, here's me and Lindsey. Lindsey Dobbs, welcome to the My Sales Day podcast. How are you, Lindsey?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. My Sales Day is excited to have Lindsey join us from Dallas, right, Lindsey? Are you smack dab in Dallas?
I am. Yep.
Perfect. Well, I personally am excited to be with Lindsey, not just because she's a fantastically talented seller, but because we are both proud Vizsla parents. And everyone knows Vizslas are the best friggin' dog breed in the universe, right, Lindsey?
They are something else, aren't they?
Sure they are. In addition to her great taste in dogs, Lindsey is the epitome of a complete sales pro. Her acquired skill set ticks all the boxes. She preps like crazy for her customers, all the way through to having AI ears. Ooh, that's a new one. That set her apart from the other sellers in the pit. Generally, Lindsey is that seller on your team who gracefully hustles her way to constant residency in the top 10%. Lindsey, ready to dive in?
Let's roll.
All right, let's start with your best sale ever. Let's hear the story. Our listeners are dying to hear it.
Okay, best sale ever. I know I was saying this. It's like as soon as someone asks you to on the spot, you forget all the details immediately, but we're going to try to remember all the things. So as I was thinking through what my best sale was, is it your first sale? Is it your last sale? Because every sale is exciting for some reason. It's the thrill of the chase. But my best sell to date was an opportunity to, I'm in digital ad sales. So most things come over on an IO basis, right? And you're trying to push a piece of business across the finish line with some very specific budget allocations, and you know exactly what's going to run. And over the last few years, we've been working more into this idea of strategic partnerships. They are stickier, they're more long-term, it's very mutually beneficial on both sides. So really thinking through things like that from a business perspective. So anyway, we had this opportunity to go into a big agency in town and pitch a big preferred strategic partnership where we were going, whoever wins this bid is the only preferred partner. So it's huge. And, it took a lot of team effort. Everyone internally was involved across the board because we had to get, marketing on board and data and supply, all the different things. So we put this thing together. I built the presentation. I led it from start to finish to organize all the pieces. And we went to the meeting and I had my two managers with me whom you know, and are amazing mentors in this industry. We took the meeting and they both played their parts too. But the thing that was so great about this meeting was that I had the opportunity and I had managers who believed in me to lead the meeting. And I say that because I think that's an important key sort of message here. One, for leadership, right? Believing in your people and giving them the keys to be able to be successful and trusting them in that. But two, to allow me to do that was great. And I took the opportunity and seized it. And the feedback that I got after the meetings from the client was that most everybody else who came into this meeting flew in their, C-suite to zhuzh up the meeting and kind of do their thing. And we were the only ones that came in and the rep that was on the business really pitched it to them firsthand. And so it just meant a lot. And it was nice that got called out and seen And then, my VP at the time gave me some good feedback too, which was, aside from your commission check, that's like the thing that we need as sellers, is that sort of like emotional support afterwards or feedback. So anyway, we ended up winning the bid, which is even better. Mic drop moment and super cool, but was definitely one of the high points thus far.
Ownership. What a great lesson. And I'm so impressed that you did have the courage. I'm not surprised, but you did have the courage to say, no, this is my meeting, my client, my meeting. And for everyone out there who thinks that you can just bring in your management, wind them up and let them do the selling, no, because your buyer is trusting you because they know that you're the one who's going to own the relationship and own the deliverables and own the servicing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a good anecdote. Thank you. And a good place to start. I love it. Hey, let's get to know Lindsey a little bit closer. She already intimated, or actually told us what she does, but let's ask a few quick round questions to learn about Lindsey. In 10 words or less, what do you sell?
Great question. Digital media. So we sell everything from connected TV. We sell the lower funnel pieces, display. The only things we don't sell are search and social, is what we like to say. We're selling to big agencies and clients direct, although client direct, we like to say, is the holy grail, if you will.
Sure. Getting to the decision, getting to the people who hold the checkbook. That's kind of important. Hey, what are the core skills that you use daily? What are the top 2 or 3 core skills that you figure are the most common?
Number 1 is listening. It's the absolute hardest thing, I think, for any of us to do, but honing in on those listening skills so that you know what the assignment is. Question asking, right? What types of questions are you asking? Are they closed or opened? And how are you probing to get to the next step? Ultimately leading to whatever your next step is, making sure that you leave the meeting with that. But I'm going to say this is the third thing, and in no particular order at this point, and I think most people actually disagree with this, as I've recently uncovered, but just the idea of, I'm going to say it like you say it in your training, Michael Hess, but write like a third grader.
That's because I can't write in any kind of level above that.
Well, it's really positive. You can't, and I'm going to tell a story later about writing in general because that's my favorite pastime, but I have to get out of that. No one wants to read a novel over your cell phone. So It's not a sales tool, right? It's get the meeting, then do your thing.
Well, you know me so well that the phrase that I often use is brevity and clarity, especially with emails. And write like a third grader, like make it so simple for the audience to appreciate. Let me go back to probing really quickly because you mentioned that second. How did you learn to get good at that?
Oh, practice. And it's so hard. Like even when we're talking about presenting, you're presenting in front of your own peers. Absolutely the hardest thing you'll ever do, other than trying to figure out the good probing questions to ask in front of your peers.
Because why? The pressure's the highest, and like why does the peer element add to the learning experience?
I think because they can smell your BS a mile away, and they know who you are. So the idea that you can't fake through the funk for a little bit, none of that sounds good, but
that's true.
Yeah.
You can't bullshit a bullshitter, and all of our fellow sellers are bullshitters.
That's a great way to put it. And that's the thing, when you're in front of a client or an agency, you're on the stage. You can sort of be whomever you want. And that's part of the appeal for me in sales, is that you turn that camera on and all of a sudden you're this actress in whatever movie you want to call it. But when you're in front of your peers, it's like right now I'm recording this with you and I'm having to pretend this is not you and like I'm on a client meeting. It's just harder, but it absolutely, going through your training, the three times that I've been through it now, is absolutely the best way I learned to to probe those types of skills.
I like those core skills that you use on a daily basis. How many years overall have you been selling?
Oh gosh. 2000, I've been here for 8 years, and I was at on the sports side for four, selling 12.
Yeah. Okay. Complete the sentence. If I hadn't gone into sales, I would have become a what?
Writer.
Oh my
Shocker.
God, me too.
I know. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I write the My Sales Day newsletter with incredible energy and commitment. I love that damn thing probably more than anybody. But what kind of a writer?
I don't know. I don't know where I would have made. I did my internship at a local magazine, a high profile magazine company here in Dallas. And it was so much fun until it wasn't, because I realized I was just the free intern. And I would go and do these assignments and write these beautiful pieces. And then my boss would take my beautiful pieces and shrink it by 90% and then publish it. So technically, I am a published writer also, Michael. But then I realized that there was not a lot of money in that, and I pretty quickly shifted gears.
I like your career choice. Complete the sentence. I love selling because.
It's such a rush.
Why? What's so great about the selling rush? It's so frustrating. You
Oh,
know it.
it is frustrating. And that is part of it, right? You have to be able to handle rejection. You have to be able to fight through, the trenches, if you will. But when you get a yes, or even a maybe, or just the next step, there is nothing better. The commission check is nice, but nothing other than that is better.
Well, the mantra I use, not just in the newsletter, but in my life, manage your performance, not results. In other words, focus on your behaviors, your actions, the outputs, and everything good will come from that if you really are obsessed in focusing on your performance. All right, let's move on. Lindsay and I have had, as everybody can gather by now, a lot of experiences working together. And one of the things that's always impressed me about her is that she's very thoughtful. Recently, in prepping for this particular recording, we stumbled onto the concept of traits versus skills. And I thought it was an interesting thread that I wanted to probe a little bit with Lindsay. So, Lindsay, traits versus skills, how do you differentiate, and what's your interpretation of why they complement each other for obviously that performance side of what sellers need to focus on? But talk to us a little bit about how you think of those two things, which are both important.
Yeah, I just to level set, I never thought about the difference of these until your training. And was an interesting eye opener. And it's important to notate what the differences are so that you know why you should care about honing in on skill sets, right? The whole point of this podcast, I know, is the skills, what are the differences, and what should you do to be successful? So starting there, I'm sort of a geek on personal growth, maybe to like an extensive point, but I'm really into, first and foremost, the Enneagram. Have you heard of this?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay.
I love the Enneagram. 10-second explanation for the audience.
Okay, great. It's your core motivations. That's it. And there's a great book called The Road Back to You. There's a couple tests you can take, although those stress me out because I'm a 7 and my personality changes on a dime. So what I love about it is that it shows your core motivations, but also those in your circles. And so it helps you really relate back to other people effectively, but to give people grace for things that you don't understand, because I'm not a 9 or I'm not a 1, right? Mm-hmm. And likewise for people to understand so I'm a 7, which is the enthusiast, shocker. And my wing is an 8, the challenger. So those two things in particular are important to sales. The enthusiast part is part of my traits of being able to go and do and have high energy and relate with people really well, kind of like a chameleon. I have always felt like a chameleon in life. Challenger piece, if you've read the Challenger sale, we read that a long time ago, made me feel seen for the first time. Like, this is somebody who gets me. Not fighting just to fight, but fighting for the best outcome and challenging the status quo. But those are all things that are inherent to me, which make this career of sales really, it's an easy mix. It's an easy, next step. But I'm not successful holistically because of those things. I've had to work on skills to get me to the next steps. So I think it's a great segue into that. So I'll tell you a quick story about how I got my first job, if you're ready for this. So
Yeah.
even in college, my sister was like, I don't know what I should major in. I'm not going pre-med. I'm not going pre-law. Like, what do you do? And she just said, best piece of advice, just take classes that you enjoy and you'll figure it out. So I'm like, great, I'll take classes that I enjoy. I want to be I love writing. I love communication. I love Greek mythology. So I took all these weird classes and came out the other side with a communication degree, which is like general studies, basically, as we all know.
Sure.
So thought I want to be a writer, did this other thing, realized I didn't make any money. So I said, okay, fine. I like sports. I'm going to just Google the local RSN, Regional Sports Network in town, find out where it is. And so essentially I put on a suit and walked up to the building, had zero plan. Now, this is the part that looking back, I'm like, I got super lucky, which there's a percentage of luck in sales. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Which is great.
And it is great, but it can be very misleading for those who expect it.
Bingo. Yes. Which then creates lazy salespeople. So in this instance, as I look back on it over my career so far, I recognize I got lucky, which we'll circle back to, and what I should have done. But what happened was I put on a suit, I looked the part, had my Aggie ring on in case I ran into any Aggies, which of course I did, just to be clear. So I walk in the building, I start walking up.
Can you just real quickly, Aggie ring, of course, Texas A&M, right?
Texas A&M.
Okay.
That's a big deal, right? So
of course,
you see someone with an ag, especially an old ag, as we call them.
Sure, it's a bond.
Yeah. So immediate ethos building, which is not lost on anyone here who's in sales, right? Like, if you can find a warm lead, it's sort of the same thing. So I walk in immediately. The first person I see is the general manager of this RSN, who is a fellow Aggie. And he sees my ring. He sees that I'm dressed up. I start chatting him up because that is my inherent traits.
That's your 7.
That's my 7.
You're enthusiastic.
Yeah. So he assumed that I was there for an interview because wouldn't you know that they had an opening for a sales assistant role. So he introduces me as a warm lead now to the hiring manager. So I go and do this interview, and finally at the end, the hiring manager says, so how do you know, such and such? And I was like, who?
I don't.
He goes, well, how'd you get this interview? Don't you know such and such? And I said, no, I just walked up here. I wanted the job. I knew I wanted to be in sports. And so he was like, you know what? And he basically hired me on the spot. So great from a standpoint of going and doing, and the things that salespeople, I think, especially now post-COVID, don't do enough of, being in person. But long story short, the skill set there is I should have prepared. I should have done some research. I should have at the very least looked to see if they had a job opening, known who the hiring manager was, some of these things. And so another thing that I've learned from your sales training is the idea of agenda making. And at first we were all so pissed at you, like all of this homework that you gave us, and like, what a waste of time. Like, we're doing this anyway. Why are we putting it down? I'm telling you, it is absolutely the best thing that you taught us in preparation for a meeting.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's now shameless plug number 3. So we've ticked those boxes. But let's just be honest. Everybody who's listening has been in that situation where you don't prepare. And don't you know that you get exposed every single time?
Yeah.
Or if you don't get exposed, you walk out and you say, I did not achieve what I should have achieved in that meeting.
Hmm.
This day and age, getting meetings with prospects and customers and even clients is so incredibly hard. And the majority of them are on Zoom, which of course diminishes the relationship building and the trust building. So, yeah, preparation is probably going to be step number one that is always going to serve you right. Back to the traits and skills. What have you learned about how to mine your traits into skill applications and or just applications that work for outcomes that you want from your customer interactions?
Yeah, that's a great next question. So they say curiosity kills the cat, but like if you
Yeah.
can take the curiosity and really hone in on what that could be as a skill, how that translates into a skill set is asking good questions. Stay curious. When you're prepping for a meeting, what are the things that you need to know about this client? What can you go search out before you go meet with them? And then what other questions does that lead to? But ultimately, why do you care, right? As the seller, how can you package all of that up into whatever you need that next step to be? When you leave that interaction with a client, you have to make sure you have a next step or the deal's dead.
What advice do you give to the seller out there who's not naturally curious like you?
Oh, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the reason it's vital is because obviously questions and probing and asking strategic questions, open-ended questions, all of these things are vital, but that doesn't come natural to a lot of people.
okay,
And I
fair.
think and I think
Yeah.
we need to help the listener on how they can work at it.
So even being a curious human, um, circling back to practice, practicing the questions that, and just start with simple questions like the standard things, right? Practice those. And that combined with active listening, good listening, knowing actually how they answered your questions and where to pivot. Like we talk about a lot on our sales team, the ability to pivot is like your greatest asset. Part of that is what we sell. There's many things we can pivot to. But I think, regardless of that, just as a seller, your ability to practice the questions, have enough of an arsenal behind you to tap into, which takes practice, and listening, pivoting to the right thing to get to your next step, you have to practice it. And I will say this too. I remember before you even introduced like the homework assignments that we would do, shameless plug number 4, that, we practiced it a bunch, but even before that, when I was a very green seller in my very first job, I had a coworker of mine who was very wise, who had old training material, and it was open-ended versus closed-ended questions. That was the first time I had ever been introduced to that. So I think that there's something there with just the training styles, understanding the difference between those types of questions. But it comes back to practice.
It does come back to practice and, as you mentioned earlier, preparation. So
Mm-hmm.
the questions, the best questions that a seller can ask are not the ones they dynamically create in their brain when they're in front of the customer. In other words, don't expect these questions to pop up in your brain while you're conversing with a customer. There's way too many things going on in your brain for you
Mm-hmm.
to be that smart, meaning you got to prepare the questions ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another element that is really crucial, and I think this is an acquired skill. Look, everything in sales is an acquired skill, right? And the other thing that's going on that is so vital is this notion of understanding you are not going to be as assertive as you need to be and ask the hard question
Oh, yeah.
unless you write it down before.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, organically at that moment, it's not gonna come to you. You're gonna default to what's safe and what's conservative, and you're not going to push and probe.
I think that is such a killer sales skill. If you can ask the hard questions, there's no doubt you're going to find success.
But you bring up something interesting with the pivot concept, and you're right. The ability inside a meeting to pivot is contingent on active listening. And if you
Mm-hmm.
listened to my glowing intro of you, not just as a Vishla mom, but as a AI ear holding seller, you do have really good listening skills. Were they always good? Were you a good listener
Oh gosh.
early in your career versus now? And what did you work on? How did it change?
Yeah. No. So no, I have not always been a good listener. I think the thing that always got in my way initially was nerves. Just purely not being comfortable in front of people with the material that I had and feeling like the expert. And so you have enough meetings like that to feel uncomfortable. And as a 7, do not like sitting in any amount of uncomfortableness or pain at all. So I very quickly learned I needed to not only prep for here are the questions I need to ask, here's my next steps, but like you better be the smartest person in that room so that no matter what they throw at you, you have an answer. Even if you don't have an answer. The idea of just saying, you know what, that's a great question. Let me go back to the ranch and find out for you. That's okay. You can't do that on every question.
Honesty, honesty. But I
Yes.
also like your honest admission here that you weren't always a good listener. I have thought about this long and hard in my practice because obviously I'm trying to teach people some of these skills that are not easily or easy to learn. And I'm talking about it's hard to learn to be a better listener. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to learn how to be a better question asker, somebody who probes, who asks the more direct, specific, hard questions. Well, the answer is rooted in the word that it keeps coming up here, practice. So one of the answers, the best answer in my opinion, is you and I get in a room, you practice the value prop, I listen, and then I have to appraise what you said. And because my obligation, my responsibility is to help you with feedback on your messaging, my listening gets better. And
Mm-hmm.
then you swap roles and your listening becomes better because you have to deliver to me some sort of a report card on how I sounded.
Yeah.
So that's how you get better at something like listening.
I also think as a practice in a meeting, if you need to buy some extra time, you just repeat what they said as a question. Like, okay, that's a good question. How do I feel about, or how do we solve for this specifically? Well, that's a great question. Or, you know, sometimes if you're not as quick, it's okay to buy a little bit of time, I think.
Not a bad tactic. It's a basic tactic. It's one that is a good crutch. I even like this one. Lindsay, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to think about that for a moment.
All
And
right.
literally stay quiet for 3 seconds. It might seem like an eternity, a little bit of a showmanship,
Uh-huh.
a little
Yeah.
bit of it. But if it's authentic, it buys you 3 to 4 seconds of like, just think about it for a second. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But what happens is we get sped up in these meetings. And of course, the customer is always threatening to leave in 2 minutes because they're not engaged or they're bored. Lindsay, the last segment I want to focus on is what I ask everybody in your chair. Headwinds. The pressures in sales have never been bigger. The pressures and stress often come from inside of the organization. How do you deal with it? How do you personally cope with the mounting stress that seems to just grow each and every day of the work week?
Mm-hmm. I would say two things. One, you just have to keep going and doing sometimes and just put your head down and be a doer. Just start crossing things off. And I will tell you, my one of my most recent managers taught me that. She was great at it. Just crossing things off a list when you don't know where to start or you're so stressed out. But more than that, another one of my managers, first female manager in the business, who I owe a lot of this piece of success to, is self-care. Purely,
Mm.
if you are not taking care of yourself, then how can you expect to be successful and take care of this over here? And the same as being a mom. You know, I'm a mom of 2 kids. So juggling the family life, the work life, heaven forbid I have a, personal life with friends or work out. It's a lot to juggle in today's fast-paced world where you're constantly tied to your desk and all the things. So making time for yourself to be healthy and active and all the whatever that means to you. For me, it's I have to work out and I have to have time for myself to think through things or meditate, etc. And because of those things, I am definitively a better mom and a better teammate.
That's fantastic. And let me announce that my intention in 25 is to add Saturday to the My Sales Day publishing week. And Saturday is dedicated to mindfulness, self-care, because it is an important element. So
yeah, love that.
I like that. Yeah. All right, Lindsey Dobbs, you got to tend to business and bring in some revenue, so we're going to cut you loose. But first, I got to remind our listeners why they joined us. You listened because you're trying to be the best sales professional you can be, even if it's a little thing that you picked up today or by reading the My Sales Day newsletter. It could make a huge difference in your selling, but your mind has got to be open. Lindsey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a blast.
And for you and everyone, remember, better habits equal better selling. Thank you for listening to My Sales Day. It was great having you here. For more, listen to our other episodes on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, leave us a review. I care what you think. And because I'm a seller like you, I got thick skin, so I can take anything you got. You can also visit mysalesday.io to join our email list and community dedicated to sellers just like you. My Sales Day is a podcast by sellers for sellers. And if you got something out of today's episode, help out a friend by sharing this episode with them. My Sales Day is proudly produced in partnership with Westport Studios. Views and opinions expressed by guests on My Sales Day are their own and may not reflect the views and opinions of their organization. Start your sales day the right way with My Sales Day. I'll see you in our next episode and in the daily newsletter.